Hi everybody, Don Giannetti, Lighting Essentials. Hey, I think a lot of you know that we're running the 52 Project 52 class or project that we call 24 Frames in May, and it's all about film. And I got a couple of emails last night from folks asking me what kind of film camera, if they didn't have a film camera, what should they get? Well, let me just share with you a couple of ideas that I have with you over the next couple of days. Tomorrow we'll talk about 35 millimeter type cameras, but since we're looking at it from sort of an hierarchy down, this is the camera I recommend to everybody who doesn't have a film camera and would like to, really get started with film. It's a very simple camera to use, but it's not very small. It's the RB67. Couple of reasons I recommend it. Right now they're dirt cheap on eBay. You can get a camera and a lens for well under $400. Good cameras, good solid cameras. They're mechanical, no batteries, just a solid piece of equipment. Let me tell you a few things that I really like about this camera. Number one, it's very heavy. This unit, especially with this finder on the top, this unit is about 9 pounds. So, doing one-arm push-ups or exercise with it will actually build muscle. It's a heavy camera. And because it's a heavy camera, it sits on a tripod. And because it sits on a tripod, you slow down. That's the beauty of these big cameras, is that you, as a photographer, slow down. Take some breaths. Look through the camera. Study the scene. Study what's in front of you. Find out what's in every corner. Upper left, lower right, upper right, lower left. What's in the corners? How does the center relate to the corners? How does the composition work? You can go up to it with your eye. You can take this off the top. I got two hands here. It's better to do that. You can take it off the top and you can actually look down into the camera. They make a top that generally comes with the cameras that'll replace the finder I just had on there, and you can look down into the camera and see it on the ground glass. Now you'll notice the ground glass has got a square cut into it, etched in there. That square tells you whether you have a horizontal, what's in the frame, or a vertical, what's in the frame. The camera shoots both from the same configuration. What I mean by that is we don't have to turn this camera. It's a brute to turn. It really is. If we want to change the angle of the camera, we simply turn the back. And now we're doing a vertical, and now we're doing a horizontal. Piece of cake. Film back is all contained, so it can come off the camera. The lens is totally self-contained, and it can come off the camera. Let's look at the film back first. I'm going to take the back off the camera and look at how it's constructed. Film goes in here from one spool to the next. You take this empty spool off, move it over here, put the full spool in, carefully thread it over, and start winding it in over here till you get to the spot where you're supposed to stop. And there's an arrow that shows you that. Close up the back, continue until it stops and you're loaded. It has a dark slide so that you can take this off the camera back and put a different camera back on without exposing the film. So when the dark slide's in, nothing sees the film. You have to pull the dark slide out so that the film can be exposed. Simple device. Not a whole lot of even moving parts to it. Put it back on the camera here. And then I'm going to take the lens off. The lens comes right off the front of the camera. And the lens contains not only the elements, the glass, but it also contains the focal shutter. It's copal. That means it flash syncs at any speed. The sad thing is, for many of photographers, that the highest shutter speed on here is, as you can see, 1/400th of a second. That's it. 1/400th of a second. Make sure you can see it in there. Yeah. 1/400th of a second. Now, why doesn't it have, why doesn't it have a faster shutter? It doesn't, because there's a whole lot of mirror to get out of the way. Pull the dark slide. You can see that's the mirror. That has to get out of the way. It's not going to get out of the way in a 2,000th of a second. It just isn't. So we have self-contained lenses. All the lenses have the shutters in them. So you buy another lens, it has its shutter in it as well. There's a couple of lenses that do have different sync speeds, but 400th is pretty much normal. This is a 4.5 lens, I believe. Yes, 4.5 lens. So it's not very fast. So why didn't they make any 2.8 lenses? Well, number one, they would be twice the size of this. Then we're talking 14 and 15 pounds in your hands. That's not going to happen. Second of all, because the fastest shutter speed we have is 1/400th of a second, what good would it do us to have a 2.8 on here in daylight? Nothing. You can't shoot 2.8 ISO 100 film or even ISO 50 film on 400th of a second in daylight. So since these cameras were pretty much, daylight, shade, strobe, it doesn't matter, right? You bring in your own light. All you got's 400th. ISO 100 with the Sunny 16 law, ISO 100. At 16 is 1/100th of a second. At 11, 1/200th of a second. At 8, 1/400th of a second. At 5.6, 1/800th of a second. Ain't no 1/800th of a second on here. So when you're outside with this and it's a bright day, you're shooting at 16, 11, 8, and you're done. Some neutral density filters, I suppose, but that's the nature of this beast, okay? The way it focuses is another thing I really like about this camera. It focuses on bellows. Let me crank these out here so you can see the bellows right there. And the bellows move the lens farther away from the film plane. That's how it focuses. That means there's no internal moving elements inside this lens. Everything is fixed. Everything stays the same. I like that. I think it makes a very nice lens. Fewer things to go wrong, fewer anomalies to deal with. As you crank it out, however, you are pulling the lens where the light leaves the lens right about here to the film plane. You're pulling it farther away. And as it pulls farther away, it gets dimmer. We call that reciprocity. And so as you would pull this lens away, you have to make up for the dimness of the light by adding more exposure. Actually, we don't call it reciprocity. I'm sorry, we call it, I just had it in my head, bellows draw. Bellows draw. Sorry, it's not reciprocity, it's bellows draw. And so we take this bellows draw out and it's farther away from the back, so we have to add exposure to compensate for the dimness. And it's all on here, so you don't have to know it in your head. It's right here. All the lenses are listed and tells you exactly where you have to start applying bellows draw as you get to that part in your exposure. So very nicely designed camera. It does everything well. It does aperture, shutter speed, compose, and keeps the film dark. And that's it. Another way it slows you down, however, is that the mechanism for making the photographs is twofold on the RB. Number one, you have to advance the film. I'm sorry, you have to cock the shutter. Number two, you have to advance the film. That's how I always did it. Cock the shutter, advance the film. Make the shot. Cock the shutter, advance the film. If you cock the shutter and make a shot, and cock the shutter and make a shot, and cock the shutter and make a shot, you just shot 3 images on the same negative. Probably not going to turn out much the way you wanted it to. Those 3 separate shots are now forever glued onto the same thing. So it's a great little camera. They're running right now on eBay for under $400. If you're lucky, you can get one for around $2 with a lens. 3 lenses I recommend. The 65mm lens, which is on here. The 65mm lens is equal to about a 35 on a 35. The 90mm lens, which is a fabulous lens, that lens is equal to about a 50mm lens on a 35mm camera, normal lens. Then the 127, which is about an 85mm lens on a 35mm camera. Those 3 lenses are pretty easy to find. The 2 you're going to find the most are the 90 and the 127. If you're a little bit more of a portrait person, you might want the 127. If you're a little bit more of a landscape or product person, you might want to go for the 90. Both are great lenses. Both will do you very well. This camera is a gas to shoot, and it's just enough different from your 35mm camera that it's going to change the way you shoot. You're not going to shoot the same way with this camera as you do with your digital 35. It's just not going to happen. So it gives you that added benefit of creativity, where a 35mm camera, nothing wrong with them, we're going to go over them tomorrow. A 35mm camera, same kind of thing, does your digital, you're putting it right up to your eye. This camera's sitting on a tripod, you're squatting down or you're looking through the top of it. A little bit of a different approach to photography. You get 10 shots on a roll of 120. Don't be excited about the 220 backs. They shoot a roll film that's twice as long, so you get 20 shots out of a roll. But most of the film makers have discontinued 220 film. So if a 220 back comes with it, great. That's fantastic. But you want a 120 film back for longevity. Just check Amazon. They do have a ton of 220 film up there. So they've got Tri-X 220. You can get 5 rolls for $30. 5 rolls of Fuji Pro 160 for $70. 5 rolls of Portra 160 Canon Kodak for $27. That sounds like a hell of a deal right there. And so it's still out there, but it won't be for it won't be probably by the end of next year. Probably be hard to find. So keep that in mind. RB67 made by Mamiya. I think it's a fantastic camera. Thank you for being here. My name is Don Giannetti. You can follow me on Instagram at WizWow. You can check out the website at lighting-essentials.com. I'll see you next time, and we'll talk a little bit about the 35mm cameras. Have a great day.